Hey everyone, Temporal here, and today we have ourselves a response to a thread that is putting out the idea that if you're playing a main tank on ladder in Overwatch, you have to be shot calling. You have to be shot calling. You're the real engine of that team. Maybe your main support could do it for you, but you've really got to be calling or your win rate is going to fall pretty hard. The main elements that they're getting into here is that they were a 2800 player, they got a 14-day chat ban, and that caused them to drop to 2300. And hey, I believe that. That doesn't seem that weird to me. They were playing at 2800, they dropped to 2300. That is absolutely a thing that can happen over a chat ban. The reason that can happen over a chat ban is this player had a fair amount of the value that they bring to an Overwatch match tied up in their comms. And comms are something that you can, bring value to a match with. You can also bring a lot of negative value to a match with your comms. And I do worry if he got a 14-day ban or she got a 14-day ban, if that was something that they were also sometimes doing. But apparently the positive value that they were bringing was worth more. It's also possible that they changed something else in their play. Not a big deal. But the reality here is no. No, you are not expected, required, mandated to hard shot call for your team every single time when you queue up as a main tank. That is a terrible belief to try to instill in the ladder, both because it's not very good for the ladder, but more importantly, it's not actually great for individual players themselves. Shot calling, I find, is one of the more distracting things to do for a tank player, and it's one of those things that actually makes it harder to focus on one's own self-improvement. When one is trying to get better at Overwatch, they're going to be thinking, some about the mechanics, some about what the opponents are doing, some about how they're going to win this fight, some about the duel that they're in, all those things, but they do need some of their brain power available to work on improving. Hey, I'm trying to specifically get better at this one thing at a time. If you've seen any of my VOD reviews on this channel, of which there are many, you're going to see that I'm pretty regularly saying, hey, spend 5 to 15% of your brain power to work on this specific new thing that you're trying to implement into your autopilot. It takes a fair amount of that available brain power on top of playing the game to shot call. It does. That's how it works. So do you have much left to improve with at that point? And you might, it's possible, but probably not. So here's what it comes to. The reason that this isn't a particularly good idea and that I would strongly disagree with this player, again, yes, of course, if you shot call and you shot call well, you can help yourself win more games. You can control the team, and I will even grant that main tank is one of the better positions to do it from. It even opens up some additional strategies to you. For example, if you were playing a brawl comp, it opens up the possibility, if you have 6 people in comms and you make callouts, to rotate from one closed space, so behind cover with your Reinhardt comp, and then this is all the open over here, and then rotate over to another closed space. And maybe your Reinhardt Reaper May comp can actually play against the, Pharmacy plus Ash comp that is going to destroy you in the open here, because you can actually do rotations across from cover to cover. You can do quick point pressure and then back, that sort of thing. But here's the thing, that doesn't happen very often on ladder. That doesn't happen in stacks. That doesn't happen outside of large stacks very often. And the ultimate reality of the matter is, even if you're in comms as the main tank, trying to call rotations, trying to do a lot of stuff for your team here, most of your games, the majority of your games, a couple people, 1 to 2 people aren't going to be in comms. And as soon as 1 to 2 people aren't in comms, a strategy like this one falls off the table. It's suddenly no longer doable. And you're back to really only having the strategies available that were the ones that everyone could sight read by looking at their teammates, seeing where they're positioned and what they're going to do. So when it really comes to it, we can look at this and say, you've got plenty you can work on as a main tank without working on your comms. If you're dropping SR like this, if you're dropping 500 SR, okay, that's fine. potentially seal your comps intentionally and go work on something else. I don't mind if you still do some comps, but potentially seal your comps intentionally and figure out what new ways that shows you to play the game. Like, hey, if you were playing a Winston that was very heavy on 3, 2, 1 dive countdowns, going in hard and going, hey, I'm going to play my Winston, I'm going to jump in, it's going to be great, I'm going to land on them, I called it, so I'm going to get my Zarya bubble, my Ana's going to heal me, my Tracer's going to go in at the same time, and if that doesn't work, I just lose. Okay, well, that's a thing that's happening, and this is a pretty strong engagement that you're calling. It's a nice option, and doing the call out does help make sure that you get that bubble, that you have your Tracer going, like that does help. But you know, there's other ways to play Winston. You can look at Winston and go, hey, if that's not on the table for me, or if when I'm doing this it's not working, maybe I need to play a sneaky Winston that sneaks up the side and then just drops on the opponent and zaps them for a bit and then hops out. Or pressures them from above and keeps them low health and, you know, sees what happens. Or maybe I need to play a Winston that is sort of sitting back but in jump range and jumps on top of Pharah rockets. Whenever you see Pharah hit someone with a rocket, you go, aha, and you pounce on it and you finish them off. Or maybe you need to very closely watch your Tracer, who's not in comms anyways, and really get a feel for when they're staged. And then once they're staged and you can see they're ready to go on a target, then you make your move without comms. And oh, not only was it easy for the Tracer to join your timing, the Tracer wanted to join your timing. It's a lot, I won't even say easier, like it's important to be able to learn this flexibility. And I'm using Winston as an example, but you could do this with any main tank where there's more that you can learn about playing the hero. And that's one of the reasons that you will find there are GM main tanks who don't use comps. It happens. So 2800 is not some hard, or 2300 is not some cap for this. And this person isn't saying 2300 is a cap, but like you really have to understand that there are other things to work on besides just your comms. Taking away your comms can force a player to respect and learn and figure out new ways to play the game rather than calling the entire game around them. I actually find that a lot of main tanks struggle. They like to call the entire game around them, and when they get the resources, it works great. But then when they don't know what to do because the only way they know how to play the game is to call the game around them. That's actually something you have to work on with teams sometimes as well. But what we'd really look at here, like you've got plenty to work on without comms. Reading your teammates' intent is a very important skill because, again, they're not always going to be in comms with you. But even if they are in comms, if they're not calling it out because the Tracer's too focused on their aim, the Cassidy's too focused on their aim, they're not calling out when they need these things, your ability to read the intent or to read what's happening without just calling the game or hearing their callouts is actually, again, pretty darn important. It will make you a better player. And then what you also get into here is tank players. Obviously, we all know this. There's a very limited queue surrounding them. There's a limited number of main tank players. You do not want to put more responsibility on, hey, this is something that the ladder just expects for them. Because if you do that, they're going to potentially queue even less. Like, oh, well, that's too high a burden. They have to be this leader of the team as well. Who wants to do that in the recreational thing? Some people do, but less than are even already willing to play main tank. And what you finally run into there surrounding that is when you shot call, when you hard take over a game like that, it is necessarily more mentally draining. Going, hey, I'm going to be the commander, I'm going to lead this, I'm going to do this. You are necessarily more mentally invested in the game than you would be in a random ladder game. And if you're more mentally invested in that game, you're actually going to burn through your mental reserves and sort of hit that tilt point faster than you would if you were just playing the game without comms, for example, playing the game to improve, playing the game to work on something, that sort of thing. So like you'll potentially play less sessions if you're hard focusing on shot calling or if you're hard shot calling every game. And you'll also potentially end up in situations where if you do, you'll improve potentially less because you've got less focus on it. And then if you do try to just play through and go, no, I'm going to keep playing, you're probably going to tilt and start being a negative influence on your teammates. You're probably, because you're more mentally invested, going to get more worked up about the Ana who isn't hitting any of her shots, more worked up about the Tracer who is losing every duel, getting constantly hit by flashbangs, that sort of thing. So it's really not the greatest thing in the world. That said, do not let this be some, oh, Temporal said I should never calm as main tank. No, you can absolutely calm as main tank. You can absolutely calm as any role. Calming could be a place that you've got 400 or 500 of your SR tied up in, and that's fine. But don't feel some need to have to calm, some belief that you have to calm. Calming is a skill. It's a skill that you should work on at some point, that you should get into your play. You absolutely do have to calm for organized play. That 100% is required. But for ladder, no. Ladder is your training grounds. Calming can actually get in the way of some of the training that you might want to be doing. I know there's going to be a group that comes in here and says, no, competitive is the hardcore competitive. It says competitive. It's the place you go to win. You should be trying to win every single match. You should sort of be trying to win every sort of match, but really you have a focus on continuing to get better. Competitive is the gym. Tournaments are your place to actually like try hard. No, we actually want to do everything in our power to win. That is just how it works. And even if you want to treat it as, no, this is the place that I am going to do this because I'm not in tournaments, the rest of the ladder isn't treating it that way. That's reality. You're going to have to work within the bounds of reality there. Okay. Those are sort of my main points that I wanted to make around here. Again, you've got plenty to work on without comms. There's a lot you can teach yourself by not having comms here. Reading intent is a very, very valuable skill that you're going to need, that your teammates have. You can avoid calling the game around yourself and see what that opens up to you in terms of things you could learn. We've got that very limited main tank responsibility. We wouldn't want to encourage them to be drained here. And then shot calling necessarily drains the player who's doing it more, which isn't, again, particularly good for the improvement because they're going to play less. And it's just a tax that people don't necessarily want when they're doing a video game after work, after school, whatever. Okay. So let's take a quick look. I'll hit a refresh on this, but let's do a quick catch up on chat as well. Okay, if Widow's not getting 6Ks every fight and they're on my team, they're throwing. If they're on the enemy team and getting 6Ks every fight, they're clearly hacking. Exactly. Hey, James. Yeah, I saw this one. I'm not going super in-depth on my response here. I think I gave enough points. I don't really feel the need to read this one out to you guys because, again, the key point is they got a ban. They dropped from 28 to 2300 as a result of them losing their comms, and they're saying, oh my goodness, calming is everything. And like, don't get me wrong, it helps, especially for main tanks, but no, people should not feel some great need to do that. Wait, Widows aren't supposed to get 6Ks every fight? I mean, you be the judge, Semitic. I put it on the internet and I didn't put a /s after it, so I must be serious. Because everyone knows reading sarcasm on the internet without a /s is absolutely impossible. I wonder how BM King 69 get their chat ban. That is pretty great that their name is BM King. Ugh, yeah. That's the sort of thing where if you saw BM King 69 in your thing, you'd probably go immediately voice chat, immediately mute match chat, etc. Guy thinks he's a good shot caller, but he's just toxic and most likely short-tempered, and I try to avoid those words because YouTube doesn't like it. So I don't have the evidence to support that. Have you heard their comms or something? Did you see something in how they're typing that leads you to believe that? Because nothing I see here other than the fact that they got a 14-day chat ban leads me to believe that they're particularly abrasive, we'll just say. Being the leader is scary. Being the leader is scary to a lot of people. There are less people who want to be leader than want to just be able to act on their own, for example. That's a thing. That's how it works. Now, there's a lot of people who want the privileges of being the leader, but being the leader is hard work, and it's not all just people doing what you say. But that's a different topic for a different time. It's almost exactly upvoted by 2/3 of the readers and downvoted by 1/3. 1/3 are probably the tank player. Right. It's like, yes, if we make a post that says, it's sort of the typical Overwatch University bad post, like, PSA, do this, or that sort of thing, do this, where it's like, they're talking to someone who isn't in their role. They're really trying to talk to the person who was in their last game. This one isn't this because he's the tank player, but it's sort of that same vibe of like, if I put this out here, all of the Overwatch players will see it. No, guys, hate to break it to you, but 270,000 member subreddit generally has 300 online at a time, and no, that is not the player base of Overwatch. The player base of Overwatch is quite a bit larger than that, and most of them do not spend any meaningful time at Overwatch University. So your PSAs to the world aren't going to work, but hey, we can dream. We can dream. His is a little less that, but it's still kind of that. Okay. But yes, like if we tell tanks this, they'll do this. No, if you tell tanks this and they believe it, you'll have less tanks queuing. Have fun. Anyway, minor detail. Slash S is banned in the UK. You're supposed to take the risk of offending people. Oh, okay, okay. Why would I want to be the leader? I play Overwatch to relax. If I want to try hard on voice chat, I'm spending time with a girl. There you go. There you go. Technically not wrong, but Temp explains it well. Thank you. Thank you. I've had people that say I have to tell everyone what to do because I was playing main tank. Forget that. I'm not going to be the childminder for 5 nerds. Exactly. Like, I have, okay. Sure, you want me to shot call for you? What are you paying me to babysit? Like, what's the exchange of goods that's going on here? Okay. Okay. Your evidence is I'm saying you got a 2-week banned voice chat. Fair enough, fair enough. Blizzard has now given me the ability to tell sleep targets they are good kitty, the mercy that heals you. Okay, okay. So, if you do comm, how do you handle people who don't agree with your cause and just straight up are toxic? Do you just get off comms? Well, if they're being toxic, you either mute them or you get off comms. Yeah, it's just not worth fighting with them for most people. Some people are going to be able to handle comms well, shut other people down. I'm going to be honest, if you're asking me how to do that, you're not going to be able to do it. Like, yes, there are ways to do it. We could go into it, but I'm not going to be able to teach you in 5 minutes how to effectively win chat battles over the internet, but not win them in like, yes, I was victorious because facts and reason, but because you effectively used charisma to get them to shut them down and effectively shut them down in a way hopefully that doesn't even cause them to be well, now they're gonna play tilted, etc. Like, there's an art to these things. There's an art to how this can be done. You really have to learn how to handle people. You really have to learn how to handle people even on the internet, which is a little bit different. But you have to effectively be like, hey, this is a hostile social situation, and how can I still come out smelling like roses? And again, that's tricky. We could get into it, but it's really beyond the scope of what I think I'd want to cover in this video. It's mostly going to be a, hey, you're going to shut them down type thing, but you're not going to expect to win. You're not going to expect them to go, oh, you were so right, how dare I? And you do understand that if you throw fire, they're going to throw fire back. So how do you throw fire in such a way? Or how do you throw warm fire instead of heated fire? Or something that's not going to get you the full blowback of, okay, now it just turns into a, rage of shouting at each other, etc. Which generally means embarrassing them a little. Okay, so current most hated Overwatch University post type is, how do I win an Overwatch game as X0 when I have obviously terrible players on my team? Those are fun ones. Those are fun ones. Temporal used to flame people in comp, confirmed. I mean, it depends how you want to define flame. Like, I do know how to do some of those stuff. I am not the best person in the world. I have seen people who are more skilled than me at, how shall I say, navigating some of those situations, but I'm certainly capable of it. And yes, I have had plenty of times where it's like, okay, let me reestablish control of this comm structure, even in random games, whatever, and shut someone down, and then they stay shut down, whatever. I mean, that's sort of a thing that you learn. It's a necessary social skill if you do a lot of leadership, or if you put yourself in hostile social situations, which is what a ladder game of Overwatch can be. Very much so. Emailing is so good at handling toxic players. Okay. Emong just generally ignores toxicity and tries to refocus the conversation on how to win, and that's one way to do it. That is one way to do it, but sometimes that will get attacked. So does Emong have a pivot out of there, or does he just mute them, or what is the case? I haven't seen a ton of how Emong handles that, but hey. Do like that about Emong? Watch him a lot? Okay. So let's see if people have good responses to this, because if we look at our upvote percent, can we see it? No, we can't see our upvote percent. That's fine. We can see it's definitely helpful, but you're not throwing if you aren't hard combing every single game. Agreed. To be honest, the few remaining main tank players get enough grief that I don't think piling additional responsibility on them is helpful at all. I think that's probably true. I'm seeing downvoted. What's downvoted? This will be fun. Try being a DPS player for a day and tell me that main tanks have problems. When I play main tank, nothing is my fault ever, no matter how badly I play on DPS. Everything is, no matter how good I play. I'm going to guess that they don't play main tank very well. Or if they play main tank, they just lock Reinhardt and stand in front of their team. I'm going to guess that, because when people actually start playing main tanks in reasonably good ways, they either get, you know, and you see this, people will get the, hey, they get MTDs thrown at them, or they get the, what are you doing over there? Why are you flanking? Why are you doing that? Why are you not standing in front of them as Reinhardt, as Orisa, that sort of thing. So like, I'm gonna guess they don't actually play main tank, or if they do, they play it in a very suboptimal way. If you're in metal ranks, like the majority of people on this subreddit, you get part of the problem regardless of how well you played. Yeah, exactly. It's just people looking for blame. Sure. Anything interesting? Been playing since loss. You know very well how often each role gets blamed. It's absurd to claim it's equal. I don't know exactly what it looks like right now. There were certainly points in Overwatch's lifespan where I'd have said, hey, DPS got the hate way more than they should. When they had no space, when all the support was going into the tanks, and that still happens, don't get me wrong, especially when heroes that players don't like Widowmaker, Sombra, those sorts of things are involved. But I think as people have realized how important tanks are, there's become actually more focus on, hey, main tank's getting outplayed, there's nothing they can do. The main tank is feeding, they're going down too quick, they're getting shattered all the time, that sort of thing. So, I don't know about that, but I'd be curious what you guys think. Okay. Probably need to work on mechanics and awareness. That kind of drop shouldn't happen from lack of comms. It can absolutely happen. You can have your comms be worth a fair amount of your play. My comms are worth a fair amount of my play. I'm aware of that. You can have your comms be worth a fair amount of your play. Now, obviously, as you get better and better, you should have lots and lots of other things contributing to play. Your mechanics, your ability to read opponents, your ability to fight plan, your ability to understand how the different duels go, your ability to, other things should get up there, and this should just become one pillar that gets removed. But it's not unreasonable for this person to have lost 500 SR. That's something that'll happen to people who their comms are a fair amount of what they bring to the match. And that's fine. You just need to win the match. Your SR is a rating of how likely you are to win the match effectively. Overwatch is a team effort 90% of the time. Your teammates are bots. You just need to synchronize around them. Understand when they're doing something. You can win games of Overwatch where your teammates are feeding. You just need to time the engagement to when they're feeding. It's very unlikely that you can 1v6 in Overwatch, but even if you're just a little bit better than the lobby, if your teammates are losing every battle, but losing it slowly, or losing it, but hey, they're at least able to do a little bit in return, if you time to when they're losing, you can do a lot to bring a game back. So you can call that a team effort, but it's you playing to the team's tempo can do a lot. You don't have to 100% be like, okay, let me get this Zarya bubble from my Zarya for this to work. Or, okay, I'm going to jump in and I have to get this nano. That's the only way I can win. I'm just using Winston examples because that's the example I was using earlier. Okay. Again, you don't have to be that Sombra that went, oh my goodness, no one followed up on my EMP. It's a team game. I can't win. Well, why didn't you EMP when the front lines just started to brawl so they were already fighting? You can play around your teammates. You very much can. Okay. Sure, anything else? When you can't do comms, it forces you to engage when your team does more often, and makes you have to have an awareness of surrounding instead of calling shots and expecting people to follow. Right, it's a learning experience, and this is very important, especially for some main tank players. I've worked with main tanks who very much, they can be good even in good tier 3 situations where, hey, these are good main tanks, they're GM main tanks, they play multiple of the main tank heroes at a GM level, they're trying to get into playoffs of open division, that sort of thing, and they really, really heavily call games around them, and you go, okay, well, we need to change this comp structure a little bit, or more, they have to zoom out and be able to see more, because sometimes your target calling needs to be on a target that you're not on, for example. Okay. Higher than them has never shot called in their life. That's not unusual either. It just means that they are getting their value in games from different places. Avoid calling in low elo unless you're absolutely sure you're going to make the right calls. Nah, I wouldn't worry about this. Like, yes, you do want to make the right calls, but what are you going to do? Like, study the game for thousands of hours before you ever do any shot calling? It's a skill and you have to build it. You're going to be wrong sometimes with your calls, and that's life. You're wrong with your calls sometimes. If you're in a team environment, you then talk it over with your team between matches. If you are in a solo ladder environment, yeah, they're probably going to stop listening to you for the rest of the match if you make terrible calls a few fights in a row. And that's fine. That's a learning experience for you. Your calls will have to get better, and this one is probably gone, and you can't force them back into listening to you. But that's fine. You still needed the practice calling if that's something you're trying to work on. Don't try to go, oh, I'm going to be perfect at this at these other things before I even start to work on this. Clouts are not needed to climb rank. That's true. Low reloads, decent chance clouts are wrong anyway. Okay, again, though, you're working on your skills. Like, that's the thing, guys. When you're on ladder for you if you're solo queuing. Like, it really is that simple. You can be a little more selfish and go, hey, what do I need to do to get better? That said, if you're making wrong callouts, people will just ignore you. And if they fight with you, again, you have to either take control of the situation, that's usually what you're going to want to try to do, or ignore them, which is generally going to be better for most players who don't already understand how to control a situation. Okay. Oh boy. Oh boy, do I even want to read this? Okay, let's do it. So, Baseball says, what you're saying indirectly is that women can't climb in the game as main tank. I've had games where I've run the whole team's plan and carried us with shot calling, but more often than not, I get flamed, harassed, and then tilted. I'm sitting at console 2300 right now, and I recently just shut off all comms and text chat. It works just fine. I'm learning awareness via audio cues, and I'm focused on trying to anticipate my teammates' actions. The mental energy that went into comms is going towards analyzing and refining my gameplay. Maybe I'll find more value in comms at higher ranks, but I'm confident I'm not sabotaging my win rate. Bravo! That's what you want to do. Turn off the comms, and then you can use it on thinking about the game more. You can use it on focusing your improvement more. That is the way to do it. And yes, women absolutely can climb as a main tank, with or without comms. Okay. If you want to start calling slowly, you just call flanks. Yeah, right. You just do callouts. You start calling meaningful cooldowns that come out. You start calling people that are taking different flank routes that your team might not see. You get more into target focus calling. You get more into fight planning. You get more into calling stabilize, things like that as you get better. You get more into making plans as you get better at it. But the basic stuff that you're not going to mess up is just call when someone's taking a flank route and call when meaningful cooldowns come out. That would be things like lamp, flashbang, ice block, fortify. Those would recall. Those would all be examples of meaningful cooldowns. There's a lot more. Nade, sleep, but yeah. You, on the other hand, wouldn't call something like combat roll because it's just not a very important ability for your team to be aware of. Cassidy not having combat roll isn't going to cause your Tracer to go, oh, let me quickly show up and duel him, whereas Cassidy not having flash or Anna not having sleep will potentially cause your Tracer, your Sombra, whatever, to show up and fight them. Your Winston to jump them even though Bubble's on cooldown. Or not having Nade, oh, that will potentially cause your Reinhardt to push when he wasn't before. All those things. Okay. Cool. So that should, well, you know what? Downvoted stuff can be interesting. Okay, that's, never mind. Okay, I think that's gonna do it. Let me do a quick catch up on chat. If you guys are enjoying the content, please drop a like, consider subscribing, but let's do a wrap up on chat here to see if there's anything interesting or any good questions for us. Okay. Temporal would make a 45-minute video explaining why the random teammate was wrong and whisper the link to them. Maybe. I see tanks get so much more crap thrown their way. Yeah, I think like at the beginning of the game, DPS got crap thrown at them in part because everyone wanted to be playing the DPS and they felt like, oh, hey, you're blocking me from doing this thing, so I'm going to be salty. Now, people have realized after like the first or second season of OWL exactly how important main tanks are. There became that greater understanding, and DPS pros would talk about it, and that helped players in general realize it, that like, hey, the main tank is so influential. In so many metas, the main tank has been the most influential player on the board, and your main tank creating openings is absolutely huge, but most importantly, your main tank not feeding as they're able to create openings, even small ones, not just dying, is incredibly important. And people have realized that to a degree, so yes, main tanks get called out more so. Like, it's almost safer for players if they're worried about their, like, oh, I don't want to get blasted by the ladder. Part of why you guys have double off tank so often on the lower parts of the ladder is, hey, neither of them individually gets blamed for getting main tank differenced if they're both playing off tank. They sort of share the blame of neither of them playing main tank. Right now, we're in a pretty poke heavy meta on ladder, I'll say. So, you know, has as much to do with the off tanks are pretty good at poke, and people don't want to play Orisa by and large, but hey. The whole diff meme originated as a way to abuse main tanks by sheer coincidence almost as soon as roll queue came in. Yeah, right. Losing a tank is way more of a deciding factor than losing a DPS in a team fight. People absolutely expect DPS to get 50% of the time. Tanks don't get that luxury. Yeah, depends a little bit. I don't know that I'd go people expect their DPS to get picked 50% of the time. Like, I guess I see what you're saying. If, hey, either they're going to get the pick or the opponents are going to get the pick. It's really a little more structured than that because your tank should be creating openings for your DPS to peak a little bit more safely than that. But yes, if your DPS gets picked early, team is going to be a little bit more understanding of that. That said, if like a Reinhardt walks in a brawl comp and your Reinhardt goes down first, that's not always going to be the worst thing in the world. Like, if a Winston or a Ball gets picked first, yeah, that's going to get complained about. But if your Reinhardt is like, okay, we walked up to the choke, we recharged resources, and now we're just pushing, and the Reinhardt does get blown up, sometimes that'll get called out as terrible, but that is, I would say that is similar to the Widow taking a, you know, grappling hook shot to try to get a pick, and she gets sniped instead. I'd say those are pretty similar in terms of, it happens. In terms of how ladder views it. If you guys think that, no, that's not true, I want to hear about it. Okay. Say diamond and above, tanks get more blame. In metal ranks, it's more of a mix of not enough healing or nothing is dying. Okay. You and Adam, this is Semitic. Reinhardt throwing, we just went in, he charged in and managed to full push payload, but nothing we could do to fix touching spawn door at the start of a round. I hear ya. I agree, James. Post was not as bad as expected. It could have been worse. It definitely could have been worse. I mean, I had to hype it up a little bit in the thumbnail because I need my views. Come on, man. Content creator. That's just how YouTube works. But, It could have been worse. That said, it's getting a fair amount of attention. You can see a decent number of people have been jumping in since we can now see how many people are in the thread. This has been jumping between 9 and 13, and this is 10 hours after it went up. It's got a fair amount of activity in here. So there's people in it. You guys can click through it. I did link it in the description below. If you want to upvote my post for visibility so that more people see the video response, that's fine. If you don't, hey, that's fine too. I just appreciate that you were here and you had thoughts to share in chat, wanted to watch, etc. Oh, Zypher says, mid-master main tank player here. I downvoted this out of the gate. I was tilting exactly as you said. Overcoming and expecting my team to match my tempo. Looking behind me, playing with the team worked. Exactly. Glad to have another example. In my push to GM, awareness of the team has mattered just as much as awareness of the enemy. Completely true. Recognizing that as a main tank, engagement timings are one of the two dials that are like the biggest, most controlling dials for whether you move up or not. Engagement timing, one of the two biggest things for main tank's abilities to move up, and it's something that they keep getting better on. Like, what's the thing that's going to make a gold main tank better? Engagement timings. What's the thing that's going to make a GM main tank better? Also engagement timings. But like, it's something that you have to keep cranking, keep trying to make better and better, and one of the biggest keys to making better is really getting a grasp of your team and getting a better and better grasp of your team. So glad you saw that one. Oh, did they? Okay, let's take a quick look. Okay. Namai, we had a great debate with them. I think you guys made me rename that one with a Ben Shapiro style debate, gets trashed, etc. type thing, and that was a fun one. You guys can find it on the channel. But what do they say? Communication is always good, no matter what role it is. It's a choice that most people make to not communicate, and while that is voluntarily putting yourself at a disadvantage, you aren't throwing. Sure. That being said, while main tank is great for shot calling, next step from just basic communication, right? Shot calling, basic communication, a little bit different. Everyone is responsible for call-outs. Everyone on an organized team is responsible for call-outs. Any role can do it, even DPS. Yeah. Pro teams have shot callers and all kinds of roles. It's absolutely true. I've had very weird roles. I've worked with pro teams where some of our more primary shot callers were in very unusual roles. I don't think I've ever had a hit scan, but I've had flex DPS, I've had off tank. Those aren't the greatest roles. I've had flex support. Those aren't the greatest roles for shot calling, but I've had very heavy shot calling contributions from those on teams, just because those are what happen in the team and you do work with what you have to some degree. If you have to develop someone, you're going to prefer to develop more in the main tank space, more in the main support space, that sort of thing. But if you already have them, you're generally not going to break the comms like that. Any role can do it, even DPS, shot calls, and all kinds of role, more of a personal preference than a specific role requirement. Until organized play. You are going to find that a lot of teams simply aren't interested in main tanks that won't comm in organized play, and or won't take a leadership role, because their teams will work better if they have it. But ultimately, you can find the occasional team that will have those responsibilities elsewhere. They'll put a very hard engagement timing responsibility on their off tank, for example, or on their main support, for example, that sort of thing. Okay. So I think that one's going to do it. If you guys are enjoying the content, please do drop a like. Consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. If you'd like to get coaching yourself from someone who has a pretty darn good idea what they're talking about, go ahead and join my Discord in the description below to see what rates look like, what sort of promos, special events we have going on, all sorts of things like that, as well as to get involved in some other stuff that we do, like internal scrims. We've seen a little bit of a push to get a few of those going again. Those aren't going to be like, oh, hey, let's go do the most structured scrim in the world of, hey, this team is going to build forever and scrim for weeks and weeks and weeks, things like that. But these are more, you could call them pug scrims, but pug scrims from people who are watching this sort of educational type content, and that can make them pretty interesting, pretty fun. People have a bit more of a shared way of viewing the game here. But I hope to see you all there, and I will see you all in the next one. Thanks.